I liked how it was reported. It was a story that needed to be told, especially with someone as prominent as him. Initially when it had happened, I heard the author of the story, how she went about trying to get A-Rod to comment on it. And at the time, I was a little sketchy, but the more I look back on it, the more I appreciate how she went about it and how it was broken. You know, he's the biggest fish in the pond right now, and they nabbed him. So I think that exposes a lot, regardless of if they release the other names or not. So.
Do you think it opens up doors for Texas Ranger, the team that they had before? All players are.
I think that door's been open. If you have any affiliation with Jose Canseco, I think the door is open. It's sad to think, and that's one reason why I really hope the names don't come out, because I would hate to see, Ken Griffey Jr. on that list. That's a man that I idolized growing up, and to see his name would just completely tarnish an entire decade, if not more. Especially when you're talking about a man that's got over 600 home runs and you don't know if he was clean doing it or not. So I think, the door is definitely open with the Texas Rangers among other teams.
Well, I think the danger of using anonymous sources is if they're not somebody that you trust and they tell you something and it turns out to be false, then all the accountability is on you. So if you're using an anonymous source, you better damn well be sure it's a good source, or you're going to find yourself in some serious trouble, especially if it relates to a serious issue or accusation.
You better be right. I mean, if I were in that position, I would use anonymous sources, but I would be damn sure that I had everything right before I went with it. The thing about using that is if you see your subject backpedaling instead of taking a firm stance on it, I think that gives you some kind of idea that you are onto something. The guys that wrote Game of Shadows had trouble with anonymous sources as well, and Woodward and Bernstein used Deep Throat, and they broke in two of the biggest stories, of the last 60 years. So. Yeah, but be right. That's the best advice I can give. I would use anonymous sources given those circumstances, and very few people are going to want their name linked to something that huge, because it's going to come back on them, because most of the time it's confidential information that isn't supposed to be leaked out. Those names weren't supposed to be leaked out. We shouldn't even know A-Rod tested positive. So, yeah, I'd just be right.
Well, they had to make sure that they were real solid with their source, because if they had proven to be wrong in that, if they didn't have him dead to rights, so to speak, when it comes down to steroid use, they would have opened themselves up to an absolutely huge lawsuit. So they never would have run with that unless they were absolutely sure and positive in their sources that they were right. It's the same with the Barry Bonds situation. Barry Bonds has always denied steroid use, but why is Barry Bonds always implicated as being possibly, guilty of steroids use in the public's mind? Because he's never sued anybody. He wouldn't sue anybody, because if he did, then all the goods would come out in court, and that's why he doesn't sue. Well, I think people need to be held accountable for what they do. I mean, it's one of the things we do as journalists, is come up with people's misconduct. And steroid use in baseball would classify as misconduct. Most of the public believed that they were seeing athletes who were drug-free, or wanted to believe that. And people have denied steroid use for a long time. And it's our job to not report what people want to hear. It's what actually happened. And in the case of steroids, it took a long time, but finally they've cracked that and found out some things. So it might be damaging somebody's career, but there's a flip side to that too. Some of those athletes that have used steroids also got a lot of money, a lot of adulation because of it, and they didn't deserve it.